At this rate, as far as I'm concerned, Septiplier is pretty much dead.
Greetings, shippers. Let's take a look at a pairing/topic you've been asking about for quite some time by using Septiplier to explore the realm of real person shipping and fiction. First off, what is Septiplier? Well, it's the pairing of gaming YouTubers Markiplier, aka Mark Fishbach, and Jacksepticeye, aka Sean McLaughlin. Both have millions of subscribers and extremely loyal fan bases whom they interact with and have very positive relationships with. On the whole, they remain largely scandal-free and come across as genuine people. As a result, their fans have developed very close relationships with them, which have extended to the realm of shipping, pairing these two contemporaries together. Now, on the one hand, it is possible to discuss this as one would any other ship. However, there is one aspect that means it must be approached a little differently. That key element being, these two are real people. When shipping occurs in this situation is the application of a fictional framework to real individuals, often in a capacity that actually reaches them thanks to the nature of their fame and the current state of social media and communication that allows greater access to the figures of one's admiration than ever before, meaning that the results and potential consequences are different than when one is dealing with fictional characters, where the most one has to contend with are differences of opinion with other fans, and on certain occasions with various levels of creative staff/creators on a project, who can themselves have varied opinions on the meaning of a work. Not that that can't be difficult in its own right, or get very serious, but it is at the same time quite different. When one is shipping real people, things can get a little complicated, so let's break this down and examine real person shipping. We will get back to Septiplier later on in this vid, so sit tight. Now, some find the very concept odd to say the least, asking, why would you ever pair real people? However, before one asks that, they must take a further step back and define just what is RPF. RPF in its purest form is just what the title suggests, real person fiction, and in actuality, it predates fandom, or at least fandom as we currently know it. People have written fictional accounts about real people since long before film and the internet. There are novel stories and myths that have told largely fictionalized versions of segments of people's lives, some even written by some famous authors, say the Bronte sisters who wrote about the Duke of Wellington. These often encompassed feats they completed or musings on their domestic lives, and this form of RPF still exists, as fictionalized versions of real characters are often used in historical fiction, or even in the publication of certain types of erotica, or other fictions. Though in these cases, research can be employed to make them as representative as the real thing as possible, or as far away as possible to make a point. However, that is not what most people think of when they think RPF. Instead, what comes to mind is the fandom shipping variety. This can contain many types of real people, from historical personages to actors to singers and beyond, though over time those have become the dominant players as this type of fandom came to narrow largely towards what many consider celebrity. Indeed, in the early days of film fandom, with the rise of gossip magazines, both fan-oriented and studio-produced, in the latter, stories were perpetuated about their stars' lives for publicity, many of which were false, and then these turned around and were disseminated by the public, many of whom took them as truth to add to their own narratives. This level of interest and investment in the lives of those society deems fascinating has continued with the modern iterations of gossip magazines and tabloid sites/shows. Is celebrity A sleeping with celebrity B? Is anyone having an affair? Are a certain couple secretly married? These later elements have been in place since the early days of visual media, but the more well-known form of RPF emerged slowly, much like the prototype for what would become shipping and fandom as we know it today. And like Slash and Gen fanfiction before it, mainstream knowledge in the beginning of dissemination can be traced largely back to Star Trek. In the beginning, as evidenced by how long such practices have gone on, many of these types of works were Gen. In fact, some early works employ a time-tested trope, that of the characters of a TV show somehow being transported into the real world to meet the actors who play them or vice versa. This story idea is old, but hey, it works, and even makes its way into canon material these days. While more sexual works undoubtedly existed, that part of the subculture was initially buried, being a sort of subculture within the subculture. However, over time it began to emerge, and some works have even been published. In the 1970s, the slash culture of homosexual pairing began to take more of a center stage, to the point where the term RPS emerged, that being real person slash. Slash being the original term that came to symbolize that type of pairing, though the slash was also employed for gen fiction, but over time its meaning changed. While the names for this type of shipping have changed, since this form of pairing came to prominence, or at least people's attention, it has only grown, alongside people's interest in a multitude of types of celebrities and the rise of the ability to consume and create such works, granted by the newfound level of access one has to these individuals and the information surrounding them. So in short, the public has always taken an interest in the personal lives of the currently popular celebrities, or those that have been mythologized. However, it has changed over time from being a near legendary experience to a controlled one to the relative free-for-all it is today. Indeed, many would not even consider historical works of fiction that contain historical figures as RPF these days, though they technically are. The rise of the internet can be thanked not only for allowing the propagation of shipping and fan culture, giving it a fertile ground to expand, and allowing fans to connect in ways that would have taken much more effort and coordination before, but it also allowed more direct access to celebrities and creators, a level of access that has only grown with the rise of social media. In many cases, it is this very access that can take real-person shipping from a fun hypothetical pastime to potentially problematic. This is especially the case with a ship like Septiplier, whose participants rose to fame on what many would consider an entertainment-based social media platform. YouTube is largely driven by the narrative of community and the accessible, genuine creator. The prevalent belief, which varies in its accuracy, is that the creators on YouTube are real people and much easier to connect with / care more about their fans than different tiers of celebrities. An image that many YouTubers foster, and in the cases of many is actually true, as YouTube is billed as a directly interactive platform versus, say, film or television, where there are layers in place between the participants and the celebrities. In fact, the celebrities in those cases must choose to lift the veil and come into contact, say at fan conventions or on social media. For YouTubers, that level of contact is simply expected by many of their fans. Whether that is right or not, it means that for those who ship, they are more likely to either send their works directly to the participants or have it sent there by some other means. Now, there is nothing wrong with sharing a connection with celebrities or even thinking you perceive a connection between some of them and choosing to expand upon it. The only new factor to take into account when it comes to real people is consideration of their feelings. Fan art and fiction can be extremely flattering, and some are happy to receive it, while it makes others uncomfortable. The same goes doubly for shipping. For many who are shipped, they are involved in other relationships or have made their confusion on the matter clear. It is best not to force one's enthusiasm for a pairing on participants who aren't comfortable with it. That doesn't mean one has to stop, it simply means it's probably not the best to send fan art / works to such a person directly if they've expressed discomfort. And it is always distressing when some message the actual significant others of one of their idols to harass them, which is more common with certain pairings than others, but has led some celebrities to be quieter about their private lives to try and protect their loved ones. A privacy that can be a bit side-eyed on YouTube, where viewers have been socialized to expect a certain level of transparency and be wary of anything else, though not all are in agreement with this thought process. Another factor in real-person shipping is if one does send it to its subject, one opens oneself up for whatever reaction the object of said fiction is wont to give, and that may not always be the one you hope for. As mentioned, the relationship between fan and creator is reciprocal, and when one cuts out the middleman by attempting to approach a celebrity directly, especially with something they have created, one must be prepared for any reaction, positive or negative. These days, many celebrities are more open to such things, although this comfort tends to center around the more traditional form of shipping. But you may still face a negative reaction, and it's much harder not to view that as an attack on oneself when the person is responding to something about themselves. Though as with most reactions, it is rarely personal, but usually an expression of one's own feelings. Another factor in the real person scenario is that fiction is based off of real events in their lives that fans will often extrapolate upon or use as justification in their pairings, similarly to how they would in a fictional pairing. The difference being the people involved know the effects events had on their own lives, and not everyone is up for having those moments redefined by strangers as motivation for them, say, cheating on their girlfriends or leaving their partners. In fact, some find it disrespectful. It also oftentimes ignores a person's given sexual orientation, which happens all the time in fan fiction, and some find it disrespectful in that setting, so doubly so when it applies to real people. It can also be nerve-wracking to have every inch of one's interactions dissected by others, especially in this day and age when so many of our interactions are filmed, whether we know it or not. In a way, by fictionalizing a person's life or creating an alternate history, it is in a way an acceptance of the perceived image of a person as the reality, seeing as how a real person is always in motion in a way a fictional one is not. Sure, a fictional person is always moving in terms of how they can be interpreted, or as works are added to their canon, and the effect upon them doesn't have the same type of lasting consequences, whereas a real human being is both a creation of people's own perceptions, their projections to the public, and the real-life events that make up their true characters, which for many is not on display. Instead, what is a persona. So works and attachment are being given to what is in some capacity or another an image. Everyone is different when presenting themselves to other people than they would be in their more intimate moments, so ultimately any fictional representation will not be fully accurate. Despite this, some fans will insist their version is the correct one, fighting with others who have gleaned something different, or with the people themselves. Is this insistence a manifestation of the idea that, like a fictional character, these public figures are in some way not real, or at least not viewed as real people, but as either something more or less? Both views would allow for such manipulations of their lives for such fan purposes. However, on the flip side, many shippers will acknowledge it's not meant to be anything like any of the above, and that while yes, these fics and art are a manifestation of their feelings, and are representations of the people they believe these individuals to be, that producing these works doesn't mean they don't view these individuals as people, that the two can exist separately and simultaneously. In short, it can be for some just for fun, and occurring with no ill intent. For some, it's simply another way of expressing their enthusiasm, and they are well aware the two aren't actually together, while others are insistent that they are, or at least should be.
Come with me, and you'll be in a world of pure imagination.
Those people, they exist in here. In my mind, I created it. Don't you understand? It is real.
Like any type of shipping, there are people who take it too far, and others who are simply having a good time. However, with RPF, the potential to offend or cross the line is much more present. For this reason, there are some who will simply never be comfortable / understand the concept of RPF, and others for whom it simply isn't a big deal. There have been numerous academic pieces written on this topic, and more will undoubtedly continue to be written. Bearing all of this in mind, let's look at Septiplier. Being a pairing of YouTubers, the two participants potentially have more encounters with these works than other celebrities, who often have buffers in place between them and direct fan contact, except on special occasions. These two operate in the same sphere, and so are often at the same events and emerged on YouTube in terms of popularity at roughly the same time, in terms of YouTube environment at least, and they have always appeared to be on friendly terms. The two both present themselves / come across as personable, enthusiastic, and kind. Both are known to get emotional about causes they care about, Markiplier a bit more so. There is many a crying Markiplier vid out there. They're sweet though. And both do their best to be forthright with their fans and seem to genuinely appreciate them. The two have done numerous collabs together and seem to have developed a friendship. Their penchant for friendliness leads to many captured moments of physical affection, i.e. hugs, arm touches, etc., all of which fuel shippers. Another key factor in this ship, as well as with many others, but particularly when it comes to RPF, is the cuteness factor. Not just on a physical level, though that is often advantageous when it comes to shipping, which contains a heavy fantasy element, but also in terms of interactions, be they spoken or physical. All of this combines to greatly excite those who are into RPF, and even some who weren't aware that they were. You can never be quite sure just when a ship will strike and exactly how you will react when it does. In fact, some people have come to know these two from the works created for this pairing rather than the other way around, which is a phenomenon that occurs across the board. In fact, many commenters on the Clans video stated that it was the fan art of these two characters that encouraged them to check out the show. Like most things, the relationship between fandom and work is not a purely one-way street, and they can both inform the other. It must also be noted that not all the Septiplier works out there are romantic or sexual in nature. Some are celebrations of the two's friendships, and indeed the ship appears to have started off that way. These works serve as an expression of happiness or hope projected onto these two's relationship with each other. Fans enjoying the idea of the two spending time together and filling in the gaps of more private moments that aren't shared with the public, as a way of being invited into that space in a way that makes one feel like a friend as well, a feeling that often accompanies YouTube fandom. However, seeing as how RPF does not exist in a void and can be measured against real-world reactions and consequences, Septiplier has not been without its share of drama, especially against those who do/did ship it in a sexual way. Namely, some felt they saw a drop-off in the amount the two were interacting in real life, and felt that this shipping had potentially caused the two to feel awkward around each other, and that Septiplier had actually ruined their friendship. This assumption has caused some infighting among certain fans, with plenty of finger-pointing and blame being assigned. Others found this assertion puzzling, as it appeared to many that Markiplier and Jacksepticeye actively played into their ship. joking around about it and at least on the surface appearing quite comfortable with it, as it is of course possible for members of a ship to play into it, either for their own enjoyment or for personal gain. All of this caused many shippers to feel quite shamed and awful because, as mentioned, most do not ship with any ill intent at all. As always, regardless of how one feels, it's always best not to reach out and bully others. Such negativity is never helpful to the situation. In this case, the two involved have actually commented on the situation, as both Markiplier and Jacksepticeye are fairly active when it comes to their fans.
I've been waiting for this forever.
Yeah, I know you have.
Septiplier.
Yeah, Septiplier is dead. I'll never be your boyfriend.
As a result, they have both come across this pairing, both in its gen form and the pairing of the two of them romantically, and both have their own feelings about it. And while both were positive about the gen aspect, there is definitely an air of unease around how they talk about the more aggressive sides of it. On Jacksepticeye's part, he does point out that this fictional subculture in no way ruined his and Mark's friendship, but that both him and Mark weren't comfortable with the depictions, especially the visual ones, of the two engaged in intimate acts. And they were especially put out by the fact that even after they had asked the fandom to stop, they still directly received such works. This is an example of how little control creators truly have over fandom, which is honestly to be expected, as many feel once works and characters are out there, they exist in the public domain, to be done with as people see fit. Not to mention, when one has a large fan base, it's difficult to tell if the message even reaches all the corners of it. Not everyone follows as actively or has the same level of access. However, it is different when real people are involved, as a situation like this can be a direct, purposeful disdain for people's desires regarding their own personage, and as a result, a dismissal of the feelings of the very people one is fond of, or purports to be fond of, which leads back to the question, is one truly fond of the individual or the perception of the individual?
Septiplier is a weird thing, because it started off as me and Mark just being good friends, and then it was kind of just like a buddy-buddy kind of thing, and we were all happy and everything, and then people took it way too far.
By Jacksepticeye's estimation, or rather hope, he claims Septiplier in the sense of the vulgarity and graphic depictions is dead. However, as of the time of this recording, that is definitely not the case, and it's doubtful it ever fully will be, as while some fans will respect their wishes, some simply will not, viewing their own agency as paramount. Also, in the case of ships this large, they rarely die, but instead peak, hitting a time when shipping is at its highest that it ever will be. However, it will taper off into less fiction art, yes, but not fully disappear. At least not for a number of years, or for as long as they remain in the spotlight, or for as long as their works remain popular. As you can see, all these factors perfectly demonstrates the minefield the subjects of such works have to navigate while talking about these types of works, as one doesn't want to offend their fan base or appear unappreciative, since as creators, so much is owed to the fans. However, one also wishes to be able to express their true opinions and hope that fans respect you enough to respect it. And it must be acknowledged that creators' opinions can change, from being comfortable with something to uncomfortable over time, and that potential fluidity must itself be acknowledged and also respected. Of course, people can and will do what they want, but one would hope that at the very least people will stop sending such musings to the two directly after they have made their feelings clear. It seems to come down to the question of whether one feels entitled to view these two as personas who are more fictional, subconsciously or not, divorcing them thusly from their real feelings, or if one views them as regular people. Given the way society treats and views those it deems celebrities, some probably do not view them as regular people. Yet in this day and age, these idols can be reached directly, and lines between person and persona can be easily blurred. It can all get pretty complicated. As for works, there's a fair bit out there, from fiction and art to role plays, and some of these are quite in depth. People have put time and effort into them, and there's no doubt there are some gems. And some fans feel that too must be respected, while others are simply not that invested, and even more still have said that they've grown out of it. The tropes are what you would expect from such a ship. The traditional, it started as a joke but became real, so basically the plot to Tweak X Craig, blending of the characters they portray, such as Markiplier paired with Jacksepticeye, creating a fusion of reality which very much bolsters the creators as personas narrative, and everything else you can think of. Womp, fluff, the whole 9 yards. For many, the question becomes, who has authority in this situation? Should this fandom exist? Well, fandom cannot be stopped, and people's thoughts cannot and should not be policed. However, as with all things, it's about respect. People have the right to create these works and be proud of them, and people have the right to be offended by them, or in the case of the creators, denounce them. Intent is also a huge factor. Are these works being created to hurt or to celebrate? And can the latter be accomplished with the disapproval of the participants? Well, it happens in traditional fandom all the time, but is RPF RPF truly different? RPF has been around for a long time, even in its modern form, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. It's a polarizing topic, and I want to know, do you ship some real pairings? Why or why not? And how do you feel if they tell you to stop? I'm really interested to see all the comments. This has been Shipper's Guide to the Galaxy. Thanks so much for watching. Special shout out to all my patrons, names on the side. Check out my Patreon to see how you can support the show if you're interested, and to hear some bonus behind the scenes musings on this video, which is already oh so long. As always, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned, for there are as many ships out there as there are stars in the sky.